The strong aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, dense and enveloping, as if each particle carried a silent invitation to slow down time. The silver tray reflected the soft morning glow that filtered through the half-open curtains, and the delicate sound of porcelain touching the metal surface created an almost hypnotic melody. She walked with measured steps, balancing her weight with the dexterity of someone who had done this hundreds of times, but who still felt a certain butterflies in her stomach every time she crossed the hallway toward the main dining room. The millionaire sat in the leather armchair, his posture impeccable, his hands clasped together as if meditating on something profound. His eyes, fixed on a distant point, didn't follow her movements. They seemed lost in memories that perhaps no one else was allowed to know. The moment she approached, placing the cup before him, careful not to spill a single drop, something unexpected happened. Without taking his gaze off the empty space, he spoke her name softly, almost like a whisper. It wasn't the authoritative, polite tone she'd come to expect. It was different, more intimate, more serious, as if each syllable carried a weight she couldn't yet measure. She stopped instinctively and looked up at him. That distant gaze now reached her, and there was something in it that one didn't see in business meetings or formal dinners. Urgency. He made a discreet gesture with his hand, beckoning her. Closer. For a moment she thought she might have made a mistake, spilled something without realizing it, or broken some silent protocol of this immense house. But that wasn't it. The atmosphere around her seemed to have changed, as if the walls had absorbed the sound and the air had grown heavier. She took a step, then another, until his voice was heard again. "I need you to see something, but it's not for anyone else to see." Her heart raced. That sentence didn't fit with the mansion's impeccably predictable routine. Everything there followed schedules, rules, and immutable patterns, and now suddenly he was inviting her to break one of those invisible rules. Her fingers slowly touched the side of the drawer to her right, a solid wood piece with fine carvings that seemed like just another detail in the luxurious furniture. But when he inserted a small golden key and turned it, the metallic click echoed in the silence like an announcement that nothing would ever be the same. Again, if you're feeling this tension, if the mystery has already begun to form in your mind, like this video and subscribe to the channel to follow every detail of this story. This helps me bring you more content like this, where every second draws you deeper into the plot. The sound of the mechanism opening was almost drowned out by the rapid beating of her heart. Inside the drawer lay an aged envelope, an unusual color, almost a reddish-brown, with a strange symbol hand-engraved on the front. It was a curved, interlocking design that conveyed the feeling of something both ancient and dangerous. He held the envelope delicately, as if carrying a sacred object, and motioned for her to sit. This was even more unusual. She had never sat there facing him in the room that served as the heart of his business and decisions. She perched on the edge of her chair, unsure of what to expect. The millionaire kept his eyes fixed on her, as if gauging every micro-expression. "What I'm about to show, you could change everything you think about me, and maybe about yourself too." His voice was low and slow, the choice of words seemingly calculated to set the stage for the revelation. But even so, there was something pulsing beneath every sentence, something that couldn't be contained. She looked at the envelope and for a second felt like she shouldn't be there. There was an almost physical sensation that this moment was a point of no return. He, however, didn't hesitate. He passed the envelope to her hands, which trembled slightly as they touched the rough, cold paper. The smell coming from it wasn't musty, as one would expect from something old, but of burnt wood, as if it had been stored in a place that had known fire. The millionaire watched her with a mixture of anticipation and concern. "Don't open it yet," he said, his tone firm but low. She took a deep breath. The silence became so intense that she could hear the distant ticking of a clock, marking time as a cruel reminder that every second brought her closer to a decision that could not be undone. Now more than ever, she felt that this moment had the power to change the direction of her life. The question echoing within her was not just what was inside the envelope, but because he had chosen to show it to her, and not to anyone else who was in that house. The millionaire rested his elbows on the arm of his chair and leaned forward. His eyes, now darker, reflected not only what was to come, but also a weight he seemed to have carried for years. His breathing quickened subtly, and the air around him seemed to vibrate with something she didn't yet understand. His hand, now free of the envelope, rested firmly on the table, as if trying to steady himself on something solid before continuing. She held the envelope tighter than she realized, her trembling fingers brushing the symbol on the cover. A shiver ran down his spine. That mark wasn't just a drawing. It seemed to carry a silent energy, a meaning. His mind struggled to grasp. He noticed her reaction, and for the first time, a barely perceptible smile appeared, a smile that blended complicity with something darker. She didn't know it, but at that moment, her life had already crossed the invisible boundary that separates normality from the inexplicable. What he was about to show her could shatter certainties, open doors that might have been better kept closed, and, most importantly, set her own existence on a path from which there would be no return. The room was plunged into an almost suffocating silence, the kind of silence that seems to hold something in the air, as if the walls and furniture knew a secret you haven't yet discovered. She entered with firm but controlled steps, and the posture of someone who believes they're in command, even without understanding the full extent of the game about to begin. He, seated behind the desk, didn't look up immediately. He simply moved his hand slowly and calculatedly, as if each gesture carried strategic weight. The key turned in the lock with a dry click, a sound so small yet so disturbing in the room. The drawer opened, revealing a carefully organized space, but where the real focus was hidden. An envelope. Not just any envelope. Its color clashed with everything else in the room. It wasn't white nor brown nor the usual shade. It was an antique hue, slightly burned at the edges, as if it had survived time or something worse. In the center, a hand-engraved symbol, imperfect. And for that very reason, more intriguing. It wasn't a letter, it wasn't a number. It was a line of hidden meaning, one that seemed to carry an unspoken pact. He held the envelope gently, but there was no softness in his eyes. He looked at her, as if measuring her every breath. "Do you know what this means?" he asked. And the way his voice sounded didn't seem to be seeking just one answer. It was almost a test, a probe to see if she belonged in the circle of those allowed to know. She fixed her, eyes on the symbol, feeling something almost physical in the way the image awakened a memory she couldn't explain. As if I'd seen this before, but in a completely different context, perhaps in a dream, perhaps in a story someone told that, until now, had seemed like a fabrication. He leaned forward slightly, watching her every micro-expression, every hesitation. The air seemed denser, as if the envelope held more weight than the paper should. The sensation came not only from what might be inside, but from the knowledge that the act of opening it could change not only what she knew, but also who she would become afterward. One detail caught her attention. In the lower right corner of the envelope, barely visible, was a thin scratch, a mark that looked like it had been made by a fingernail or a blade. It wasn't there by chance. What if it were a second clue, hidden from those who really paid attention? He held the envelope at table level, turning it so that the light hit it fully, revealing subtle reliefs on the surface. They weren't decorative. They looked more like a code, perhaps engraved with minimal pressure, so that they were only visible at the right angle. Silence stretched. He offered no further information, no encouragement, no discouragement. He simply waited. She realized that any hasty reaction would be a mistake. Opening that envelope could be a one-way trip. Pretending not to see it might get her to safety, but at the cost of something that might be more valuable than her own safety. The tension between her instinct for curiosity and her fear of the unknown began to build like an internal war. All she knew was that one way or another, that symbol wouldn't leave her alone until she discovered its meaning. And this is where I ask you, if it were you, would you open that envelope or pretend you didn't see anything? The symbol is there, engraved with such meticulous detail that it seems to pulse in the soft light of the room. She feels her stomach churn, not from immediate fear, but from the strange feeling of déjà vu that washes over her. It's impossible. That same drawing, almost identical, was at the bottom of a forgotten box in the attic of the house where he grew up. A box no one would touch, covered in dust and stored as if it were something that shouldn't be found. She remembers the first time she saw it. It was a rainy day, and she was hiding from an argument between her parents. When she lifted the cloth covering the box, that symbol appeared, engraved on a heavy, cold medallion. At the time, she didn't know what it meant. Today, looking at it again, engraved on an object in the millionaire's hands, it feels as if invisible threads connect the past and the present in a way that cannot be coincidence. The millionaire notices her fixed focus on the symbol. It's a look he can't hide, no matter how hard he tries. Then he smiles. But it's not a casual or polite smile. It's a smile that carries intent. It's slow, controlled, almost intimate. A smile of someone who knows more than they're saying, of someone who recognizes the importance of that moment. It's as if he's waiting for her to remember, as if every second of silence is calculated to increase the pressure on her thoughts. And in that instant, the room seems to shrink, as if everything around has lost its relevance. There's no music, no murmurs, no distractions, just the symbol, the smile, and the certainty that nothing there is by chance. She tries to stand her ground, but she feels heat rising through her body, a mixture of curiosity, fear, and connection. She can't explain it, but there's something about him that irrationally grips her. It's as if a forgotten part of herself has just awakened, just because of that look. He takes a step toward her with the calmness of someone who doesn't need to rush to get attention. The air thickens, and she realizes her breaths are shallower. It's not fear. It's something more dangerous. It's the feeling of being read from within, as if he knows exactly what she's feeling and is using it to his advantage. The millionaire doesn't say anything right away. He simply tilts his head slightly and observes every micro-expression on her face. It's as if he's confirming theories he already had about her, and then finally he breaks the silence with a simple question, but one that carries a crushing weight. You remember, don't you? The way he pronounces each word is measured, soft, almost hypnotic. She swallows hard. She's unsure if the memory is real or if it's being induced by the atmosphere he creates. But the symbol, that symbol seems to hold answers to questions she didn't even know she had. The tension grows with every second. She wants to ask what it means, but fears the answer will change everything. There's something magnetic about him. And it's not just his appearance or his impeccable posture. It's the way he places her at the center of the enigma, as if the whole conversation, the whole evening, the whole encounter were just leading to this moment. He knows she wants to know, and he knows that the longer he holds back the revelation, the closer she willingly steps into the trap. Because that's what it is, a psychological game. A game he seems to master with the precision of a master. She feels the need to break that cycle, but each time she looks at the symbol, a new wave of confused and fragmented memories floods her mind. Small flashes, low voices, discussing something in a distant room, the feeling of being watched as a child, a specific smell of damp wood and rusted metal, all linked to that medallion in the attic, all now reflected in the object he holds. She wonders how many coincidences it takes before something stops being a coincidence, and he, with the patience of a predator, seems to be counting every second of her hesitation as part of the game. The room begins to feel smaller. The sound of other people's footsteps in the background is distant, muffled as if the world has decided to shut up to hear what's about to happen. He leans in a little closer, leaning in slightly, and whispers something that seems more like a provocation than an explanation. Some marks don't disappear. They just wait for the right moment to be remembered. She feels a shiver run down her spine. This wasn't just about the symbol. It was about her. About something he believes she carries. Something perhaps even she herself knows. And it's at this point that the tension stops being just curiosity and becomes inescapable. Her heart races, and the only certainty she has is that this moment is about to change everything. But before giving any answer, asking any question, She wonders if she really wants to hear what he has to say, because the feeling is clear once you know there's no going back, and maybe that's exactly what he's waiting for. And you, if you were in her place, facing someone who seems to know secrets from your past that not even you remember, would you risk hearing the truth, or would you walk away before it was too late? He invites her to sit, and the air seems to thicken in that instant. It's not a common gesture from him, and so each movement now takes on a meaning she doesn't yet understand. The slight creak of the chair as it's pulled out echoes in the silence of the room, an almost choreographed silence to set the stage for what's to come. What I'm going to show you could change everything you know about me, and about you. His words cut through the space like precise blades, not because of aggression, but because of the weight of the promise embedded within them. As he speaks, his hands tremble, but not from weakness. There's something in that gesture that blends control and vulnerability. He holds the envelope like someone carrying a sentence, and at the same time, a key to a forbidden safe. She realizes he's never looked at her like that before, a look that seeks neither approval nor sympathy, but rather a commitment to face what's about to be revealed. Each second drags on as if time has become at odds with the rest of the world. The distant sound of the clock seems to hammer, reminding her that there is no going back once the seal is broken. He runs his thumb over the envelope's flap, hesitant, as if every fiber of paper were a thread holding him securely within a familiar narrative, and breaking it would plunge him into uncharted territory. She feels her own body lean forward, as if pulled by an invisible magnet, but at the same time a primal instinct warns her. Something here will shake the foundations she believed to be unshakable. He takes a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into a freezing ocean, and closes his eyes for a moment, perhaps seeking courage in a place only he knows. The envelope is unusual, not one of those purchased at a stationery store without intention. It is thick, yellowed at the edges, as if it carried years of existence even before. Arriving at this moment, there is a seal, a raised design that she doesn't recognize but which conveys the feeling of something official, almost ceremonial. The weight of the moment lies not only in what the envelope holds, but in the fact that he decided to give it to her. This in itself is a break from the pattern, a detour that leaves her uneasy. She remembers all the times he avoided talking about the past, always deflecting with clever, evasive answers, like someone who built a wall too, high for anyone to climb. And now, without warning, he opens a door and invites her through. What does he hide there? A secret that condemns him, or a truth that sets him free? He finally opens his eyes, and what she sees isn't fear. It's the rawness of someone who knows that by revealing this, there will be no way to rebuild the old version of himself. The corner of the envelope tears with a sharp sound, almost offensive to the silence, and for a moment she feels as if the world around her has stopped to watch. He removes a sheaf of carefully folded sheets, but before opening it he looks directly at her and says, "Are you sure you want to know?" It's more than a question. It's a last chance to back out before the line is crossed. But her curiosity is no longer a spark, it's a blaze. Her ego begins to swell silently, not out of arrogance, but from the feeling of being about to enter a restricted circle where few have access. It's as if he's placing a rare piece in her hands, a piece of power that could rewrite not only his story, but hers as well. And deep down she knows accepting that invitation is forever giving up the comfort of ignorance. If you were in her shoes, would you open that envelope, or would you rather live without knowing what's inside? She held the envelope with trembling hands, feeling the rough paper brush against her skin as if every fiber held a secret she didn't want revealed. The air in the room seemed thicker, almost solid, and the sound of her own heartbeat became a muffled drum in her ears. Every second before tearing open the seal felt like a psychological test, as if someone invisible was watching and measuring how much she could endure before giving in to curiosity. As she slid her fingers open it, she realized there was no return address, no stamp, no clue to the letter's path. It was as if it had simply appeared there, dropped out of nowhere, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. The paper inside gave off a faint scent of old wood mixed with something sweet, almost imperceptible, as if it had been stored with memories that didn't belong to that time. When he finally unzipped it and opened it, he found no written words, no letter, no explanation, just an old photograph. The worn black and white revealed that it wasn't recent. The edge was slightly torn, and a crease crossed the faces of the two figures depicted. The impact was immediate. Her eyes fixed on a child's smile, a smile so genuine and luminous that it seemed to span decades without losing strength. Beside her, a woman tilted her head slightly, her expression one of affection and protection. But it wasn't just any woman, it was her. Or rather, someone completely identical to her. The same jawline, the same eye contour, the same way she held the child by the shoulder, almost as if she wanted to keep her safe from any threat in the world. Her mind began searching for logical explanations, sifting through every known possibility. An ancestor, genetic coincidence, a montage? But none of these hypotheses seemed to hold water for long. The sharpness of the resemblance was so unsettling that any attempt to fit it into something rational dissolved into thin air. Even the woman's gaze in the photo seemed to carry the same intensity and weight of experience that she herself carried in her eyes today, as if they shared not only appearance, but also a silent history. The light streaming in through the window illuminated the photo in a way that highlighted every detail. The fabric of the dress, the texture of the hair, even the dust accumulated in the corners. It was as if everything screamed authenticity, and yet the presence of that portrait in an anonymous, contextless envelope made it almost a provocation to her sense of reality. What else could be hidden behind that simple image? Why, of all people in the world, had it ended up in her hands? The silence around her seemed to amplify every thought. She felt a shiver run down her spine, not from the cold, but from the sensation of being at the center of something greater, something she couldn't control. Every time she looked at the woman's face in the photograph, she had the strange feeling that she knew she would be watched at that moment, as if decades ago she had posed for that photo, knowing that one day she would be found and recognized. Do you think this child just looks like her? Or is it something impossible to explain? The room was plunged into an almost suffocating gloom, as if even light itself were afraid to penetrate the heavy air. He leaned back in the leather chair, his gaze fixed on something not exactly in front of him, but on a past that seemed to pulse in his mind. Between his fingers, a photograph yellowed with age, marked by creases, as if it had been folded and hidden for decades. When he handed it over, he made no dramatic gesture. He simply extended his hand, as if offering something too dangerous to neglect. This photo was taken before you were even born, he said in a low tone, almost a whisper, as if each word were measured so as not to awaken something dormant. On paper, the scene seemed ordinary at first glance, but there were details, subtle, almost imperceptible, that left a strange sense that nothing there was random. In the corner, an ownerless shadow, diffuse contours that belonged to no visible figure, the gleam of a metallic object, half hidden, reflecting the light uncomfortably. The place depicted seemed ancient yet alive, as if it still existed in some secret corner of the world. Before she could formulate a question, he stepped forward. There are people interested in this image, people who already know it's with me now, and who will inevitably know it's with you. The words fell heavily, each syllable sinking into her consciousness. The pressure in her chest increased, as if simply holding that piece of paper had established a direct connection with something invisible and implacable. She tried to laugh, to force disbelief, but the seriousness on his face left no room for relief. He wasn't the kind of man who spoke for the sake of speaking, and his choice of words didn't seem accidental. He didn't say curious or interested. He said people, carrying a cold, organized, purposeful connotation. People who act quickly, who don't waste time explaining. People who don't ask twice. As he spoke, the air seemed thicker, as if even the clock on the wall had slowed to listen. The distant sound of footsteps in the hallway made her stomach churn, and she wondered if she was imagining it, or if there really was something or someone out there paying attention. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Who were these people? Why would such an old image hold value to them? And even more disturbing, what would happen now that the photo had changed hands? He leaned back, his fingers tapping lightly on the armrest, his gaze fixed on her, as if assessing every micro-expression, every hesitation. If I were in your shoes, I would hear it all the way through, but not everyone has the stomach for that. The sentence hung in the air, sharp as a thin blade. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was a field of tension, a space where any decision made could define more than she could imagine. Hook for comment. If he were in her shoes, would he stay to hear it all? Or would he run? Her breath catches the instant the object touches. Her hands. It's light, but carries an invisible weight that seems to sink her fingers in. The rough fabric slides slowly as she unrolls it, revealing the same symbol she'd seen before, engraved with almost supernatural precision. Each line seemed to pulse, as if branded not just into the metal, but into some deeper layer of reality. The man before her holds his gaze fixed, intense, almost impenetrable, and his voice is firm, as if dictating a sentence. If you accept, you cannot go back. The sentence, spoken unhurriedly, doesn't sound like an ordinary warning. It's more like a key locking invisible doors behind her. Her heart races, trying to keep up with the mixture of fear and excitement spreading through her body. For a moment, she considers retreating, but curiosity is like a living force that allows no hesitation. It's always been this way, ever since she was a child, when she'd put her hands where they shouldn't, defying rules just to see what would happen. And now, faced with this choice, he realizes it's not just an object he holds, but an invitation to cross a boundary few dare cross. She feels his gaze penetrating, as if he can see what's happening inside her, as if he knows her refusal would be just a momentary lie. He knows the kind of person she is, the one who can't bear to live wondering, what if? The silence between them is dense, almost palpable, and each second increases the weight of the decision. She notices that the symbol isn't just engraved. There's something like a subtle inner glow that seems to respond to the touch of her skin. The man takes a step forward, closing the distance, and the air grows thicker. Do you understand that, once you accept, there will be no turning back? He repeats, not as if doubting, but as if he wants her to pronounce the commitment herself. She swallows hard, feeling that somehow this choice will rewrite everything she knows about herself. Her mind tries to find logic, but logic fails to explain why she feels like she's been there before, as if this scene were an ancient memory about to be completed. The fear of losing what's familiar mingles with the desire to discover what's hidden behind this symbolic door. It's as if her entire past has led her here. Every decision, every mistake, every impulse. And now, faced with this mysterious piece, she understands that it's not just curiosity, it's a need, a hunger that gnaws at the soul of someone who has always sought something greater than ordinary. Life. Her fingers close more firmly around the object. A strange sensation runs through her arm, as if invisible chains were being broken within her. The man notices and says nothing, just watches, with a slight nod of approval that doesn't quite reach a smile. He knows the choice has already been made even before the words. So this is it, she thinks, feeling a chill run down her spine. It's not pure fear, it's a shiver of recognition, as if something inside her has been waiting for this moment for years. The symbol seems to vibrate almost imperceptibly, as if reacting to the decision. The atmosphere shifts. The world around her seems to recede, sounds grow distant, and for a moment, she feels as if there are only the two of them in that space. He leans in slightly and whispers something she doesn't fully understand, but which sounds like a password, a code that will only make sense later. She feels that, from this point on, everything she knows could melt away like sand through her fingers. And strangely, this possibility doesn't scare her. On the contrary, it awakens an almost dangerous impulse to see how far this can go. His hand briefly touches hers, not in a gesture of affection, but as if sealing a silent pact. It's in that touch that she feels the true weight of the decision. It's not the object, it's not the symbol, it's what it demands of her. It's the courage to not look back, to throw herself into something without guarantees, knowing there's no return. And, deep down, she realizes she's always sought precisely this kind of risk, one that isn't measured in losses and gains, but in transformation. The question that remains is no longer whether she's ready, but whether she could have endured living without knowing. Now tell me, if it were you, would you have the courage to hold on to something that would forever change who you are, even without knowing the price? He leans back in his leather armchair, staring intently at the wall as if reviewing every detail of a past no one dares question. The silence in the room weighs heavily, and you can almost hear your own heartbeat as you wait for him to speak. Then, without warning, he blurts out, "All this fortune didn't come just from business." His tone is low but firm, as if he knows exactly how much impact these words will have. It's the kind of sentence that dismantles the myth everyone believed. For years, everyone repeated that his success was the result of strategic vision and boldness. Alone. Now, with this confession, it becomes clear there's a hidden meaning to the story. A path that doesn't lead through spreadsheets and meetings, but through something much more obscure and, in a way, seductive to the listener. He speaks of the symbol, the one many have seen discreetly engraved on the ring he never takes off his finger, but no one has dared to ask what it means. A symbol that, according to him, is more than a brand. It is a living connection to a pact made many years ago, under circumstances that defy all rational logic. It wasn't a decision made on impulse, but a calculated choice, where every detail was considered, every risk measured, and every consequence accepted. He describes the night it happened, a night charged with a dense, almost suffocating atmosphere, where each lit candle seemed to consume not only wax, but also part of a future that hadn't even arrived yet. His words are not adorned with dramatization. They are raw, direct, as if being ripped from an internal vault he's kept locked for decades. And then comes the part that truly breaks any resistance. This pact now involves her blood. The phrase hangs in the air like a sharp cut. There's no rush to explain who she is, but his gaze shifts, and you realize that for him, this isn't just a matter of remembrance, it's a matter of urgency. Every detail he reveals from then on is an invitation to the abyss. He speaks of how, for years, he believed the pact was something distant, almost symbolic, and that the price paid had ended that first night. But the symbol, according to him, is not an inert ornament. It is a key that holds open an invisible door, and this door demands tribute, not randomly, but always choosing the moment when everything seems most stable. When it finally seemed his life was free of any shadow, something changed. The symbol burned into his skin without contact with fire, and that was how he knew the charge was near. His voice gains weight when he mentions that the connection with her is not casual. There are blood ties, but also ties he cannot explain, as if forces beyond time or distance had decided she would be part of this cycle. It's not about money, he repeats, as if needing to reassure himself that wealth is merely a byproduct of something much deeper and more dangerous. He says he's tried more than once to break this connection, but every time he got close to a possible solution, something happened. Accidents, unexpected failures of allies, illnesses that appeared out of nowhere, and each time he tried to free himself, the symbol seemed to become more alive, more pulsating, as if connected to a heart that wasn't his. The tension grows when he says that she knows nothing, but that the time to tell is coming. There's evident fear, but also a strange acceptance, as if he knows that fighting it can be more dangerous than giving in. He ends this passage without any relief, leaving more questions than answers, as if purposefully keeping everyone on the razor's edge of curiosity. And now I need to know, if you were in her shoes and discovered that your life was tied to such a pact, would you accept the price or risk everything to try to break it? The silence of the hallway seemed to weigh down on her like an invisible wall. The air, once light, now had a metallic taste, as if each breath carried with it the promise of something bad about to happen. Her fingers still trembled, not from the cold, but from what she had just witnessed. It was as if the world around her had stopped, and only the distant sound of her own heartbeat echoed in her ears. Then, before she could process it, firm, hurried footsteps approached. shattering the silence. They weren't hesitant steps. They were decisive, calculated, as if whoever was coming already knew exactly where to find her. The metallic echo of boots against the narrow floor of the hallway made her stomach churn. It was then that he appeared in the shadows, emerging like a shadow taking shape. His eyes found her, cold and alert, and in one swift movement he approached until he was inches from her face. His voice, low and sharp, carried the urgency of someone who knows there's no time for slow choices. "They already know you saw." There was no explanation, no context, just that one phrase, dry, almost like a sentence. In that instant, her body seemed to lose its weight. The world around her dissolved, and the corridor became a maze with no exit. His whisper didn't sound like a generic warning, but like confirmation that she was now part of something bigger, something she couldn't simply ignore or pretend hadn't happened. Her heart raced, not just from fear, but from the whirlwind of thoughts trying to find logic in it. What did they know? How did they know? And most importantly, who were they? She felt the weight of the newly discovered information burning inside her, as if it were a bomb about to explode, and she were the fuse. With each passing second, the sound of other people's footsteps approaching grew clearer, more menacing. This was no longer a mere coincidence. It was personal. Her breathing became ragged, and her eyes searched for any escape route, but every shadow in the hallway seemed to hide more danger. His gaze, still fixed on hers, offered no comfort, only the stark reality that the choice she made next would change everything. It was the strange mixture of fear and pride that was beginning to well up in her chest. Fear of the risk, pride in, perhaps for the first time, having something no one else had, the truth. But was it a truth worth keeping? Or was it the kind of revelation that, once shared, would turn all eyes on her? The sound of voices in the background grew closer, carrying the tension of those who come to get answers no matter the cost. In that moment, she realized it was no longer just about what she had seen, but what she would do with it. So, tell me, would you reveal what you saw to the police, or would you keep it a secret? The door opens slowly, and the sound of its hinges echoes through the silent room, as if time itself had stopped to watch what was about to unfold. The shadow crosses the threshold, bringing with it a presence impossible to ignore. The millionaire, seated at the head of the long table, doesn't look away. His hand firmly slides the envelope across the polished surface, as if delivering more than just papers. There he transfers a weight, a destiny, a secret. That could only change everything. His gaze is a mix of urgency and farewell, as if he knew that this gesture would be the last in a life that would never be the same again. The figure before her pauses, and the tension between them seems to fill the air. There are no words, only the muffled sound of the wind beating against the windows. The envelope lies waiting, carrying within it something capable of opening doors or locking them forever. Each passing second is like a distant drumbeat, increasing the rhythm of anticipation. She finally reaches out, but before she can touch him, her eyes meet his. There's a flicker of something no one present can decipher, an ancient secret or a silent agreement. The entire room seems to lean forward, as if the walls want to hear what's about to be said. The millionaire takes a deep breath, as if conserving strength for a final battle. Her hand rests on the envelope, and in the next instant, a shiver runs through the room. It's as if an invisible chain has been broken, releasing something that has been contained for too long. The silence is so intense that even the beating hearts seem too loud. But before anyone can react, she takes a step back, the envelope now clutched between her fingers. The look she gives the millionaire isn't one of gratitude, nor of fear. It's something else entirely, something that makes the stomach churn, and the mind begin to formulate 1,000 hypotheses. Without saying a single word, she turns toward the door, each step echoing like an announcement that everyone's fate is about to change. Her hand is already touching the doorknob when the millionaire stands up abruptly. His voice, firm but charged with emotion, cuts through the air. "You know what this means?" She stops, not looking back. For a second that seems like an eternity. The whole world seems to depend on her decision. When she finally turns the doorknob, The cold light from the hallway floods the room, revealing only her silhouette. And then what happens next is something no one is prepared to see. If this scene touched you, if this tension has kept you hooked until now, leave a like and subscribe to the channel now. In the next video, we'll reveal not only what was inside that envelope, but also the true connection between her and the millionaire, a connection that, when revealed, will completely change your entire understanding of this story. Don't miss it.